Each night, a single slug can strip your seedlings to bare stems and leave behind hundreds of eggs, multiplying the chaos for weeks to come. Across Europe, invaders like the Spanish slug have turned cozy gardens into battle zones, forcing even the most careful growers to rethink everything they know. The truth is, stop slugs fast. 5 methods that actually work isn't about hoping for luck. It's about taking back control before your next harvest disappears. Most people underestimate what really happens in the dark, and the consequences of waiting even a day can be devastating. Why are slugs so unstoppable? And what actually puts an end to it? The answer begins just after midnight. Every gardener knows the feeling. You wake up early, step outside, and the first thing you see are ragged holes punched through lettuce, bean leaves stripped to veins, and tiny, glistening trails winding across the soil. The damage is not just cosmetic. In a single night, slugs can turn a promising row of seedlings into bare stems, leaving nothing but slime and shredded green behind. It is not just the visible loss. Each adult slug has the potential to lay hundreds of eggs, hiding them in loose soil, under boards, or tucked beneath pots. Those eggs are almost invisible, clustered in jelly-like masses, no bigger than a pea, but each one holds another generation ready to hatch. In mild, wet weather, a single slug can produce up to 400 eggs in a season. That means a handful of survivors tonight could become thousands by the end of the month. The real trouble starts after dark. Slugs are nocturnal, feeding in bursts when the air is cool and damp. They emerge from their hiding places, under mulch in cracks, beneath old boards, drawn by the scent of tender leaves and fresh seedlings. During a single damp night, a healthy adult can eat its own body weight in plant material. New plantings, especially lettuce, spinach, and beans, are favorite targets. The damage is fast and severe, seedlings clipped at the base, leaves chewed to lace, and young fruit gouged before it ever ripens. Gardeners often underestimate just how quickly this can happen. A bed that looked healthy at sunset can be devastated by morning. It is not just the loss of plants. Slug feeding creates wounds that invite rot and fungal disease, turning a small problem into a much bigger one. And because slugs hide so well during the day, most people never see the real size of the threat. By the time you notice the damage, the population has already exploded. Each night you wait, the odds tilt further in the slug's favor. Seedlings disappear, harvests shrink, and frustration grows. That is why every successful gardener learns to act before the damage spirals out of control. The first step is understanding just how quickly things can change, and why waiting even a single night can cost you an entire season's work. Every garden, no matter how carefully tended, is part of a living system. Slugs are not just destroyers of seedlings. They are also decomposers, quietly recycling dead leaves and plant debris back into the soil. In healthy numbers, native slugs like Aryan Ader help break down organic matter, feeding birds, frogs, beetles, and even hedgehogs. But not all slugs belong. The Spanish slug, Aryan vulgaris, has spread across Europe and North America since the 1950s, outcompeting native species and earning a place among the 100 most damaging invasive species in Europe. This slug can self-fertilize, survive harsh winters, and reach densities that wipe out not just crops, but wildflowers and woodland seedlings. Where it takes hold, native slugs vanish within a few years. The difference between a balanced garden and an overrun one often comes down to which species and how many are present. For gardeners, the first instinct is often to wipe out every slug in sight. But that approach rarely works, and it can damage the web of life that keeps pests in check. Integrated pest management, or IPM, offers a better path. Instead of aiming for total eradication, IPM starts with understanding the roles slugs play and sets a clear goal. Keep numbers low enough that seedlings and harvests are safe, without harming the helpers, predators, pollinators, and soil builders that make a garden thrive. The IPM ladder always begins with the least disruptive step: habitat tweaks, morning watering, and removing debris that shelters slugs. Only when those steps fall short do we move up to barriers, traps, or targeted baits. Each method is chosen for its balance: effective against the invaders, gentle on the rest of the ecosystem. This mindset shift changes everything. Instead of a battle to the last slug, it becomes a strategy game. The gardener becomes a kind of field general, weighing risks and rewards, choosing the right tactic for each patch of soil. In this way, the mission is not destruction but balance. The goal is a garden where seedlings stand a fighting chance, native wildlife flourishes, and the soil grows richer year after year. With the Spanish slug on the move and climate change stacking the odds, this approach is no longer just smart, it's essential. The next step is to look at the practical tools and methods that fit this strategy, starting from the ground up. The fastest way to cut down slug numbers is to go after them directly, right when they are most active. Slugs feed at night, so the best time to hunt is after dark, especially following a rainy day or a good watering. For this, you will need a flashlight or headlamp, a pair of gloves, and a jar or bucket filled with soapy water. Walk slowly along your garden beds, checking under leaves, along the edges of boards, and beneath overturned pots. These are the places slugs hide during the day. Each adult you pick off now can prevent hundreds of eggs later in the season. Drop every slug you find straight into the soapy water. The soap breaks the surface tension so they sink and cannot escape. To make your nightly rounds more effective, set up a few slug hotels. Lay down flatboards, pieces of cardboard, or even upturned citrus rinds near your plants in the evening. By morning, you will find slugs gathered underneath, drawn by the cool, damp shelter. Lift each board or trap and scoop up the slugs hiding there. Some gardeners add a pinch of salt or vinegar to the water for faster results, but plain soap works just as well. For an easier hands-off approach, beer traps use chemistry to lure slugs away from your crops. Slugs are drawn to the smell of fermentation, carbon dioxide and other vapors released by yeast, not the alcohol itself. Any cheap beer will do, or you can mix water, sugar, and a pinch of baker's yeast for the same effect. Pour the liquid into a shallow cup or a plastic container and bury it so the rim sits level with the soil. This is important. If the rim is above the soil, slugs will not find their way in. If it is too low, you will risk catching ground beetles and other helpful insects. Place traps at least a few feet from your most vulnerable plants, since the scent can actually draw slugs in from surrounding beds. After one wet night, check the traps. You will often see several drowned slugs inside. Empty and refill every couple of days, especially after rain. Hand-picking and beer traps together can quickly bring down the population, especially if you stay consistent for a week or two. Both methods are safe for pets and wildlife, and they give you instant feedback on how many slugs are active in your garden. Once you have thinned out the numbers, you will be ready to protect your plants with longer-lasting barriers and safe baits. Iron phosphate pellets offer a way to control slugs without putting pets, birds, or pollinators at risk. These pellets look like small, dry grains and are scattered in a thin line around the plants you want to protect. The science behind them is simple but effective. When a slug eats even a tiny amount, the iron phosphate interferes with its calcium metabolism. The slug stops feeding almost immediately, crawls away, and dies within a few days. Unlike older slug baits, there's no risk of secondary poisoning for hedgehogs, songbirds, or pets that might eat a dead slug or stray pellet. That's why iron phosphate is approved for organic gardens and widely recommended by extension services. The pellets are designed to be attractive to slugs, with food-grade ingredients mixed in, so you don't need to use much. Just a light sprinkle is enough. Most gardeners find that a single application around the edge of a raised bed or in a ring around vulnerable seedlings can make a visible difference overnight. You'll notice fewer holes in leaves and less slime on the soil by the second morning. Because these pellets break down into iron and phosphate, they actually feed the soil as they disappear, leaving no harmful residues behind. Timing matters. Slugs are most active after rain or watering, so apply pellets when the soil is moist, and slugs are likely to be out feeding. If rain washes the pellets away or they dissolve, it's important to reapply, especially during wet spells when slug pressure is highest. Always check the label for the right amount and avoid piling up the bait, as a thin, even spread works best. Many gardeners use iron phosphate as a backup when hand picking and traps aren't enough, or when planting out prized seedlings that need extra protection. It's especially useful for those who want to keep their garden safe for children, pets, and wildlife, while still getting reliable results. With careful, targeted use, iron phosphate helps keep slug numbers down and lets new plantings thrive, all while fitting neatly into a balanced, eco-friendly garden routine. Copper barriers and collars turn the gardener into an engineer, building clean lines of defense right where slugs try to invade. The science here is simple. When a slug's slime touches bare copper, it sets off a tiny electric current. That mild shock is enough to make most slugs pull back and look for an easier meal. But not every strip of copper will do the job. Research and years of trial in real gardens show that copper tape or mesh needs to be at least 2 inches wide, preferably more, if you want reliable results. Narrower bands or tape that's tarnished and dirty just don't give the same effect. For pots or raised beds, wrap a full-width band around the outside, making sure there are no gaps, no soil, or leaves bridging the copper. Even a single leaf touching both sides can give slugs a bridge right over your barrier. Some gardeners prefer copper mesh, which adds a rough surface to the electric effect. Mesh can be cut to fit and lasts for years, but it still needs to be checked after storms or heavy watering. Oxidation is another factor. Over time, copper will darken and lose some of its zing. A quick wipe with vinegar or lemon juice brings back the shine and the shock. For collars around single plants, cut a strip of copper at least 2 inches tall. Form a ring and press it gently into the soil so slugs can't sneak underneath. The collar should stand straight, not slouch, and stay clear of mulch or weeds that could create a shortcut. Physical barriers go beyond copper. Diatomaceous earth, made from fossilized algae, works by scratching and drying out a slug's soft body. Sprinkle a ring of dry powder around your seedlings. Just make sure the soil is dry and reapply after any rain. The effect is mechanical, not chemical, so it's safe for pets and wildlife. Some gardeners use sharp grit, eggshells, or even wool pellets, but research shows diatomaceous earth is the most effective of the bunch, as long as it stays dry. For a sturdier defense, plastic collars or rings made from cut-up bottles can keep slugs from reaching the stems of young plants. These work best on freshly planted seedlings and should be pressed a ½ inch into the soil to block tunneling. Cost is always part of the equation. Copper tape isn't cheap. Expect to pay a few dollars per meter for the good, wide stuff. But a single band can last several seasons if kept clean and clear. Diatomaceous earth is inexpensive, but you'll use more during a wet spring. Collars can be made from recycled materials for almost nothing. The real investment is in checking and resetting your barriers after heavy rain or when plants grow. No barrier is set and forget, but these methods let you protect your most prized crops with a one-time effort and a few quick checks each week. Once you've set up your defenses, you've completed the core toolkit every gardener needs to keep slugs in check, season after season. Surface dryness is the single biggest factor in slowing slug activity, and there are a few small changes that make a surprising difference. Watering in the morning instead of the evening lets soil and leaves dry out by nightfall. Slugs need a damp film to move and feed, so when surfaces are dry at dusk, their nightly damage drops sharply. Some extension trials found reductions on par with chemical pellets. Raised beds and drip irrigation help too, keeping the surface drier for longer. Removing what gardeners call slug hotels, old boards, empty pots, dense weeds, cuts down on hiding places. Each time you clear away debris or tidy up the mulch, you force slugs to travel further in the open, where they're more likely to dry out or get picked off by predators. Even trimming the lowest leaves from crowded plants can help. When stems and leaves don't touch the ground, slugs lose easy bridges into the canopy, and seedlings are less likely to vanish overnight. Mulch choice matters as well. Dense wood chips and grass clippings hold moisture and create perfect habitat. Switching to straw or coarse bark keeps more of the surface dry and less inviting. If you notice slime trails leading under mulch, try raking it back from seedling rows or switching to a rougher material. Encouraging natural predators is another quiet boost. Leaving a patch of wildflowers, a pile of stones, or a shallow water dish can attract ground beetles, frogs, or birds, each one a helper in the fight. The more you fine-tune the environment, the less you'll need to rely on barriers or baits. Each tweak stacks the odds in favor of your plants and keeps the garden balanced for the long run. Now, let's bring all these methods together and see what happens when you use them side by side. In my own garden, I kept track for 2 weeks. Every morning, I counted slugs under boards, checked beer traps, and looked for fresh damage on my lettuce and beans. The first night, I picked off 27 slugs by hand and caught 12 more in 3 beer traps set a few feet from the beds. After scattering iron phosphate pellets around my seedlings and pressing copper tape tightly around my raised beds, there was a clear change. By the end of the first week, the number of slugs under the boards dropped to 8, and the traps held only 3 or 4 each morning. Fresh holes in the leaves became rare. On day 10, I found just 2 slugs hiding under a pot, and no new damage to the lettuce at all. Physical barriers made the biggest difference for my youngest plants. A collar of copper tape around a row of beans kept every seedling untouched, while a ring of diatomaceous earth, reapplied after rain, stopped any new trails from forming overnight. The old hiding spots, like overturned pots and thick mulch, got cleaned out and replaced with straw. That extra step meant fewer places for slugs to wait out the day. After 2 weeks of this layered approach, my tally showed a drop from over 40 active slugs down to just 5. The beer traps stayed nearly empty, and the seedlings grew strong, with barely a bite out of any new leaf. That's the real payoff. Healthy plants, fewer losses, and less time spent worrying about what's happening after dark. If you've tried one method before and didn't see results, try stacking them. Share your own results or tips in the comments. Every garden is different, and the best ideas often come from experience. For more real-world fixes and tested advice, make sure to subscribe. Slugs can lay hundreds of eggs in a single season, and documented studies show that a single night of handpicking can remove 20 to 100 future pests. Field trials confirm that iron phosphate pellets stop slug feeding without harming pets or pollinators, while copper barriers at least 2 inches wide trigger a proven deterrent response. Yet, despite decades of home experiments and published research, no method alone can guarantee a slug-free garden, especially as invasive species like the Spanish slug continue to spread. Some questions remain, such as the long-term impact of barriers on native populations and the exact effectiveness of beer traps in wet climates. Still, the evidence is clear. Integrated strategies, including morning watering and habitat cleanup, can reduce slug feeding by up to 80%. Today, the best documented results come from combining methods and adapting to local conditions. The fight against slugs is ongoing, but with these proven tactics, gardeners can protect their crops while respecting the ecosystem.